Well, Donald Trump has just 32 hours left as President of the United States, with Joe Biden set to take the oath of office on Wednesday afternoon. The assault on the Capitol almost 2 weeks ago has forced much of the area into lockdown, bracing for an unprecedented transfer of power. Roads, sidewalks and bridges are closed, and barricades and fencing are in place to prevent another attack. The National Guard is already out in force. The FBI is vetting all troops as details emerge linking some Capitol rioters to the US military. More on that in just a moment. Trump will be the first US president in modern history not to attend his successor's inauguration. He's spending his final hours as president holed up in the White House, planning his last-minute pardons and meeting with advisors. CNN's Caitlin Collins has more now from Washington.
It's President Trump's final full day in office. His schedule looks a lot like it has for the last several weeks, ever since, of course, he lost that presidential election to Joe Biden, where it just says he has many calls and many meetings. But beyond that, not a lot of detail on Trump's schedule. And of course, we have not seen him publicly since last Tuesday when he went to Texas to visit the border wall. And one thing we are expecting, though, in this final full day that Donald Trump is in office is a list of pardons to come our way, because the president is expected to either pardon or commute the sentences of about 100 people today. That's what we're hearing from sources so far, and we know that he has spent several days reviewing that final list of what that's going to look like, including meeting with Jared and Ivanka Trump, as he did on Sunday. He had another meeting on pardons, we were told, on Monday, and so we were expected to get that list today, of course, because Wednesday is going to be the president's final trip out of Washington as a current president. He's leaving before Joe Biden is going to be sworn in, but there are new questions about just how many people are going to be at that send-off ceremony for the president at Joint Base Andrews, because we know the White House has invited a lot of people. They can bring up to 5 guests per invitation, but we've heard from some people who say they're not going to go either because of the travel restrictions that are happening in D.C. given that siege on Capitol Hill, or the fallout from the president's response to that attack. And so it's an open question of what that ceremony is actually going to look like for the president. But that's what we're monitoring today, and whether or not the president's going to appear in public or just make that video that we know he taped on Monday, that final farewell address really highlighting his accomplishments. That is something we expect the White House to release today. But beyond that, it still remains to be seen what the president is going to do, at least publicly facing. Caitlin Collins, CNN, the White House.
And some 25,000 National Guard troops have been authorized by the Pentagon to help keep the inauguration safe. But fears of an inside attack have prompted additional screening of the troops themselves.
So they're screened, and then they're repeatedly screened. A regular background check is enhanced with more screening, more details, and it's layered. So the FBI is part of it. The Secret Service is part of it.
Acting Secretary of Defense Christopher Miller has said there is no specific intelligence of an insider attack. But since several rioters have known military service backgrounds, security officials are taking the threat seriously. CNN's Shimon Prokopets explains what they're doing to head off any trouble.
I think this is a case of where we're seeing the FBI and Secret Service and all the intelligence officials and law enforcement officials leaving nothing to chance, throwing everything out on the table. And what they're picking up on social media chatter is that you have these QAnon conspiracy theorists that think they could somehow infiltrate the National Guard and get in and somehow cause some kind of disruption. There are layers and layers of security here. So if you go through one section, let's say you do try to say you're a National Guard member, very difficult to do, but let's say you do, there are multiple layers of security to get through. The other thing here is that a lot of the National Guard teams, certainly that I've come across to and I've talked to, they are all from the same division. They are all from the same state. So they all know each other, so that if someone comes in as a stranger, they would be able to pick that up and say, okay, well, this person here doesn't belong. The other thing, one of the most secure areas right now is that inauguration stage inside the Capitol. The National Guard is not going to have access to any of that location. Most of them are on the perimeter, on the outside, securing the outside areas all across Washington, D.C.
And while Washington prepares for the inauguration, justice officials are pushing ahead with investigations stemming from the riot on Capitol Hill. There are now 80 known defendants facing federal charges, and here is one of them. This is Riley Williams. She is accused of stealing a laptop from House Speaker Nancy Pelosi's office. Williams faces charges including violent entry. And then there is Guy Reffitt. He is charged with obstruction of justice and entering a restricted building. An affidavit alleges that Reffitt threatened to shoot his own children if they turned him in. The January 6th insurrection was captured on video from hundreds of angles, and now investigators are using that very same footage to make arrests. CNN's Tom Foreman.
They all be on the table, and thanks to the rioters themselves, investigators may have all the video evidence they need. Tom Foreman, CNN, Washington.
In the lead up to the attack on the Capitol and in the days since, many Republicans in Congress have refused to publicly acknowledge that Joe Biden fairly won the election. CNN's Jake Tapper asked one of Biden's senior advisors if the president-elect is prepared to work with lawmakers who denied his legitimacy.
Two-thirds of your former colleagues in the House in the Republican caucus, two-thirds of the Republican caucus, including Kevin McCarthy, including a whole bunch of Republicans that you probably considered friends, voted for the lie, voted to disenfranchise millions of voters from Arizona and Pennsylvania after the terrorist attack. How are you going to work with those people?
Well, look, at the time, you definitely looked at them with the side eye. But, you know, what we have right now, the disasters, you have so many families that are hurting. You have so many people that are dying. We don't have the luxury of picking who we're going to work with and who we're not. Look, we're going to advance our agenda. Anybody who wants to help us, we want their help. If we have to go at it alone, we'll do that, but we don't want to. These problems that we're facing are not Republican or Democrat. These are American people that are dying. And it's Americans that can't put food on the table and can't pay their bills.
And President-elect Joe Biden is ready to hit the ground running after his inauguration. He plans to unveil a sweeping immigration bill on day one of his administration. The legislation offers a pathway to citizenship for the millions of undocumented immigrants currently in the U.S. It is a massive reversal from the Trump administration's immigration policies. CNN's Jeff Zeleny has more on Biden's plans.
2 days before taking office, President-elect Joe Biden and his family filling food boxes in Philadelphia at a community service project to honor the legacy of Martin Luther King Jr. It's his final stop before traveling to Washington on the eve of his inauguration, where the pomp and circumstance from his own swearing in as vice president will be far different on Wednesday, amid the country's stubborn pandemic and a Capitol fortified by wartime-like security. He's still putting the finishing touches on his inaugural address, aides tell CNN, with an overriding theme, a clarion call for national unity. And just after the ceremony, Biden is planning for swift and sweeping action on his first day in office.
And the first thing I will do, I will rejoin the Paris Accord.
In addition to making good on a campaign promise to rejoin the Paris Climate Accord, Biden will also end the travel ban on predominantly Muslim countries, halt evictions and student loan payments, and issue a new executive order requiring masks on federal property.
It's not a political statement. It's a patriotic duty.
Yet Biden will not be surrounded by his own cabinet when he arrives at the White House. The Senate has not confirmed any of his nominees, even those tasked with national security. The confirmation hearings for Secretary of State, Defense Secretary, Intelligence Chief, and Treasury Secretary are set for Tuesday. Incoming White House Chief of Staff Ron Klain told Jake on Sunday that confirming those nominees is critical and must be done even as the Senate begins an impeachment trial.
It's important for the Senate to do its constitutional duty, but also to do its constitutional duty to move forward on these appointments, on the urgent action the country needs.
Biden believes the inauguration is one way of beginning to open a door toward bridging that divide. Jill Biden asked country star Garth Brooks to perform at the inauguration. He said yes, telling reporters it was not a statement of politics, but one of unity.
I might be the only Republican at this place, but it's reaching across, loving one another, because that's what's going to get us through probably the most divided times that we have.
So when Joe Biden does take office on Wednesday at noon, none of his cabinet secretaries will be confirmed. That is far different than from 12 years ago when he assumed the office of vice president and Barack Obama was president. At that point, they had 6 cabinet secretaries confirmed. That is why the Biden officials now are looking across the government to find acting secretaries who will effectively be in charge of the government when President Biden takes office.